Good morning. Those that are able, if you would stand and join me at the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Tuesday, April 11th, 2023. It's 9 o'clock, and this is the county board meeting for those of you that thought you maybe were somewhere else. Nobody's leaving, so you are at the right place. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Additions, deletions to the agenda. We have none from Tabitha. Does anyone?
Second.
A motion, a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. And we'll have our next item of business is our approval of our consent agenda. I will look to the board. Is there anything that anyone wants to pull or further discuss?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote. Commissioner Blaine?
Aye.
Casper? Lemire?
Aye.
Wincher?
Aye.
And myself, Jelinski, is an aye vote. That motion passes. That takes care of our consent agenda. Our next item of business, and we've got a couple of them this morning, are proclamations. And our very first one, near and dear to me, is our National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. We have a group of individuals here from Public Safety, from the Sheriff's Office, and certainly the Sheriff, Chief Deputy, a couple of sergeants, even a couple of dispatchers, and the dispatch supervisor. I would invite you all to step forward, if you would, please. Good morning, Sheriff. Good morning, Rachel. Good morning, Victoria.
Good morning.
Please.
So we're definitely honored to be here this morning. We'd like to read a proclamation if we can.
Please.
All right, so whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas Morrison County dispatchers efficiently coordinate emergency services for both man-made and natural disasters to ensure the health and safety of our community, and whereas public safety dispatchers are the first and the most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services, and whereas public safety dispatchers are the single vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and first responders by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety, and whereas while enduring shift work and frequent emergencies, Morrison County dispatchers continue to perform their duties in a dedicated, diligent, and loyal manner. Now therefore, the County Commissioners of Morrison County do hereby proclaim, in conjunction with National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, the week of April 9th through the 15th, 2023, Public Safety Telecommunicators Week, and commend the devotion, contribution, and services of the professional 911 communications dispatchers who serve Morrison County. And I did bring with me two very special people here. First one's Rachel Zimmerman. She's been a 911 dispatcher of Morrison County for 16 years.
Just about, yeah.
And then our communications supervisor, Victoria McKissick, who has 28 years in in law enforcement and public safety. So
Excellent.
I can tell you from my own experience, I got hired by Paul Cheetah, Sheriff Paul Cheetah, as a dispatcher, and it was probably the hardest job I ever had. Talk about multitasking, being on top of things, remaining calm during these stressful calls. They do everything, and they're the most important people, some of the most important people you'll probably never see. And like Rachel's shirt says, tell me your worst and I'll send you the best, so.
Absolutely.
And that's all emergency
like that.
services, so we're very proud of them. And with that,
Absolutely.
I'll turn it over to you. Mr.
Thank you, Sheriff. I'd look to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Gentlemen, further discussion on 2023 Telecommunicators Week.
I just want to, Mr. Chair.
Please.
I just want to say thank you for everything you do. You are the life link between those in need and the police and sheriff and first responders, and we appreciate it very much.
Commissioner Blaine?
I'll just say, Sheriff Larson kind of put the lens on this. The rest of us out there don't really understand or can't comprehend the demands of your job. So for us, the best we can do is to say thank you and encourage you to continue your work in public service.
Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you. And again, it's a team effort, like the sheriff said too. We have dispatchers, we have emergency management. We all have to work together. We've had emergencies here, whether natural disaster, we've had one here a year or two ago. This all works together, and again, as the sheriff said, thank you for what you guys do.
Commissioner Casper.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say thank you. You folks are a stabling force in a haywire world. We thank you for that. We thank the Lord for you. Thanks for being there. Absolutely.
2023 Telecommunicators Week is a special week for me. It always has been. I'm looking at Rachel and I'm thinking, has it really been 16 years?
16 years ago, you hired me.
That's a long time. I do know what it's like. And when the sheriff says it's one of the most, if not the most, stressful job that he's ever had, and he is the sheriff of Morrison County, he's 100% correct. I'm very clear, I very much remember when the sheriff was sitting in the dispatch position, and short of, I dislike my job very much, Sheriff, would that be a good way to put it? I'm not sure. I'm certainly not taking anything away from you, so don't misunderstand. But truly, the job that you never know what your next item is going to be, ever. Ever. You never know, and it's different, truly, every single time. And I don't care if it's a cat in a tree, it's a different call every single time. So I just want to do my very best to say thank you. The most appreciated position and unknown at the same time in public safety is our critical care 911 dispatcher, our telecommunicators. Thank you. Gentlemen, anything further? Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? This motion passes. Sheriff, you had one more thing?
Yep, I do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
If I could call up,
Sean, can we get a picture with?
Yes,
Absolutely.
we'll need that.
after the picture, I just want to introduce.
Oh,
the deputy.
sure, absolutely, absolutely. Please, I would like you to both come forward.
Sit, Tom.
They can sit. Put them right in the middle here. You get to sit.
I get a hug.
Come
I
on,
knew this.
come on. Sorry. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Long time. Please. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good week.
Thank you, man.
Locked it up.
Sheriff, there's always one more thing you're on.
One more thing. So Caleb Elfring, he came from Crow Wing County. He worked as a correctional officer. He was a FTO, field training officer. We hired him as a, part-time intermittent, and now he's been here, 2 weeks? Yep. And he actually stepped into our three-quarter time benefited deputy position. So
Great.
Cool.
just wanted to introduce the board
Outstanding.
to Caleb, and we're very lucky. Every time I look at him, he's got a big smile on his face, and he's there to serve the public, and I know he's gonna do a great job. So,
Welcome aboard.
Welcome to the
Aboard.
family. Yep.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. All right, our next item of business is going to be National Public Health Week. Good morning. Please, take a chair. Absolutely.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
So we're here for the Public Health Proclamation. Cindy's going to read that.
Please.
Thank you.
Whereas the mission of Morrison County Health and Human Services is to enhance the health and well-being of Morrison County residents and communities by providing quality services that promote healthy behaviors, prevent disease, protect from harm, and assure access to quality health services in collaboration with community partners. And whereas the vision of Morrison County Health and Human Services is to assure that every individual has the opportunity to achieve and maintain an optimal level of health and independence and to lead a vital, productive life. And whereas the Morrison County Board of Commissioners are working toward a community whose citizens reflect physical, emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And whereas the many programs provided by the Morrison County Health and Human Services benefit all county residents, whether directly or indirectly. And these programs are essential ingredients of a healthy population. And whereas the Morrison County Health and Human Services Department must continue to reach out to those in our community who seek assistance. And whereas the Morrison County Health and Human Services Department must continue to promote community health and educate residents of the benefits of a healthy lifestyle. And whereas the Morrison County Health and Human Services declares to continue to identify local public health priorities and implement activities to address the areas of public health responsibility, which include assuring an adequate local public health infrastructure, promoting healthy communities and healthy behaviors, preventing the spread of communicable diseases, protecting against environmental health hazards, preparing and responding to emergencies, and assuring health services. Therefore, be it resolved that Morrison County and the Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the month of April as Public Health Month.
Excellent. Gentlemen, I'd look for a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second. A motion and a second. Further discussion. Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you. Again, you're kind of one of the cogs that the county does here. You know, we just had public safety here. Now we have public health. You guys do a lot behind the scenes that people just don't realize, you know. So,
Absolutely.
Again, and that's really what you and your staff are here for, you know. So again, I want to thank you and appreciate what you do.
You're welcome.
Gentlemen. Commissioner Casper.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you as well. You know, you guys are there for the down and outers, for the downtrodden. Thank you for doing that. You're the good Samaritans of this day. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to say thank you for all the work that in these past few years where you guys were more in the spotlight. I think it's a good thing now that maybe we're not talking about public health and the challenges with COVID and the pandemic and those types of things that we can look at that as something in the rearview mirror, but that doesn't diminish the importance and the effectiveness of our county public health department and all of the staff and their commitments. So to that, I applaud you, but I also applaud the fact that we're not talking about COVID for once.
Thank you. We're happy it's moving on as well.
I'm confident you are happy of that also. And truly, like our last proclamation when we talk about our dispatchers who are never seen, many times staff over here are never seen either. You still have to get the job done, and you do get the job done. So I appreciate that. For your entire staff, I certainly hope that you bring that back.
Absolutely. We'll share that with
The
them.
board does. Gentlemen, we've got a motion, a second. We've had discussion. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, I would look to all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And our next item of business is, oh, yes, forgot about the photo. Please, come on up. Thank you.
I get to sit.
Absolutely.
I don't look quite
Look
as
at
short.
that. Perfect.
You get the middle.
Oh, there, that's all right. Got it.
Perfect. Thank you both very, very kindly.
Take care.
Have a good day, ladies.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
And we've got a few more.
So our next proclamation is from our Morrison County Family Connections team. So this is, if you remember when I was with the board last, I talked about the prevention services, right? One of you asked about what we're doing about prevention. So this group is spearheading those efforts in Morrison County. And so Anita is going to be reading our proclamation.
Thank you
Wonderful.
for allowing us to be here today. The proclamation is for the National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas child abuse and neglect continue to be a problem within our society, and whereas April has been declared National Child Abuse Prevention Month, and whereas Minnesota has initiated many efforts to promote child abuse prevention programs within the counties, and whereas Morrison County has promoted such programs and recognizes that children and families are an important part of our society, needing the support and protection of our community. And whereas Morrison County recognizes the dedicated work of our community professionals, neighbors, and extended family that provide assistance to prevent and intervene in cases of child abuse and provide support to parents. And whereas special thanks given to the Morrison County Family Connections team and the interagency members for the efforts, funding, and provision of parenting education and support through Circle of Parents, support group, social media parent education on Facebook, and the child abuse prevention curriculum provided to schools in Morrison County. And whereas the Morrison County Family Connections team recognizes and supports the efforts of parents, extended family, friends and neighbors of children to provide a safe and loving environment for children. Now therefore, be it resolved that April is hereby declared Child Abuse Prevention Month in Morrison County. Signed this 11th day of April, 2023.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'd look for a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second, further discussion, and I need to start further discussion off because I failed to do this. It's the third proclamation. Who are we? I'm sorry. Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Anita Larson, school
Thank you.
social worker at Dr. S.G. Knight and the CEC in Little Falls.
Thank you.
Taylor Hernandez, Child Abuse and General Crime Services Coordinator at Hands of Hope.
Thank you.
So my birth name is Carissa, but I go by Minnie Zacher, soon to be Wilczek, because I just got married. And I am a program director at Oasis Central Minnesota.
Perfect.
I'm Megan Holzheimer. I'm a children's mental health case manager here from Morrison County.
Outstanding. Thank you. And of course, Katie. Thank you very, very much. And thank you for everything that you do with this program. When we're talking about children, we're talking about defenseless people, opinion, of course, that we truly have to take the time, the expertise, the family, and that's truly what you all are. Gentlemen?
I just would like to just say thank you too for what you do, providing parental support and protecting our kids. It's a noble job and we appreciate it very much.
Commissioner Casper?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you as well, and I just think of these defenseless ones, and thank you for standing in the gap. I think as the Lord said that if someone would mess with these little ones, it would be better that a millstone be hung around their neck and to be thrown into the deep. You guys are there preventing that, and greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Commissioner Blaine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Katie, yes, I was that one who asked that question to you about what kind of preventative measures, and you could have very well said and pointed to me and say, just wait 2 weeks, and I will bring the ladies here to show you. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the language in the proclamation there too, where not only are we providing intervention to protect the vulnerable, but we're also providing support for parents and families out there who may be struggling with stresses of unknown nature in difficult times. And so you all do amazing work that is probably undervalued in the community, which is probably the greatest shame of that. Please go forward in keeping up the good fight. So thank you for being here.
Commissioner Winch.
I have nothing else to say other than agree with what the board here said. You guys, again, appreciate what you do here at the county, so thank you.
Excellent. We have a motion. We have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you all very, very kindly. Appreciate it a
Photo
lot.
op.
Yes, please, come on up. You bet, you bet. Oh, that's fine.
This time you have to stand.
Yep, we'll stand.
This one's a stand.
Well, you're kind of messy here, Commissioner.
That's yours, mess.
Thanks for picking that stuff up. My good grief, I can't argue.
You can take it.
No, you're, you are taller. No, I'm not. No, we gotta get your own frontier. Perfect. Thank you all very, very kindly.
Thank you, Gail. Keep up the good work. Keep up the good work.
Could have pointed me out.
Thank you, Katie.
Sometimes it's best to leave it wrong.
All right, our next item of business is going to be Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Good morning, everyone, and before we get started, this time I'll ask right up front, please identify yourself.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay DiMatteo. I'm the Sexual Assault and Volunteer Coordinator at Hands of Hope.
Taylor Hernandez, General Crime and Child Abuse Services Coordinator at Hands of Hope.
Okay.
Anita Larson, I've been an advocate at Hands of Hope for 32 years.
Stephanie Ack, Executive Director for Hands of Hope.
Thank you. Thank you very kindly. Please.
Whereas sexual assault is an intolerable, violent crime with public health implications for every person in Morrison County, either as a victim, survivor, a loved one, or a community member. And whereas the voices of those who have been victims of sexual violence must be heard through public awareness and education activities. And whereas in fiscal year '22, Hands of Hope Resource Center served 51 sexual assault victims in Morrison County. Of those 51, 18 were children, 10 were adults, and 23 were secondary victims. And whereas every 68 seconds an American is sexually assaulted, and every 9 minutes that victim is a child. Nearly 93% of juvenile sexual assault victims were assaulted by someone they know. 34.2% are family members, and 58.7% are acquaintances. And whereas no one person, organization, agency, or community can eliminate sexual violence on their own. The Board of Commissioners join Hands of Hope Resource Center in believing that all Morrison County residents must be a part of the solution to eliminate crimes of sexual violence. Now therefore be it resolved that Morrison County and the Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim April 2023 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in honor of all Morrison County residents who have made a conscious and dedicated decision to end sexual violence.
Thank you. I'd look for a motion.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion, gentlemen? Commissioner Wincher?
Yeah, again, you're an organization that's kind of the silent type here, but you're our neighbors here right across the street, or not a street, attached to us here. And this is something too that goes on in our county that people aren't aware of, that need help. And you, again, you guys reach out to them, or people can reach out to you. And again, thank you for what you do.
Gentlemen, anyone have anything further? Commissioner Casper?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for being there for these little ones. It's precious that you step in to protect them. Thank you.
As everyone knows, County Board, each one of us individuals have many different committees that we sit on. Hands of Hope is a committee that I've sat on since I was elected as a board member. But I've also been connected directly and or indirectly with Hands of Hope for way longer than I care to say. I know what it is that you do, and it's not fun. And when we talk about volunteers, that's exactly what Hands of Hope is Hands of Hope is made up of volunteers who are there, who have that commitment, who have that ability, that urge, that want to go further, to take that extra step and to listen. So thank you all very, very kindly for that. Anything further from the board?
Mr. Chair, I just would ask the question, if these ladies in this organization wasn't there, would we be able to recognize our community?
We would be taking a giant step backwards if that was the case. All right. Hearing nothing further, we've got a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Ladies, if you would come forward and we would take a photo. Or again. Sorry. Morning. Don't have to whisper.
Ready?
Yes.
Good.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies.
There, we're done with that stuff.
Perfect.
Mike loves these photo ops.
No, I know.
All right, our next item of business this morning is going to be Camp Ripley. General, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning,
I know
General.
you have the presentation digitally, but we brought along some surveys that I'd ask the public to take an opportunity to fill out for us.
Certainly.
And this will give you all a chance to take notes, so you can have a chance to fill that survey out.
Thank you, General.
Thank you for being here this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And more importantly, thank you for giving me an opportunity to come and represent Camp Ripley again. This is one of my favorite times of year, and it gets me out of my office, but more importantly, it gets me a chance to come and see public government at work, both at the township and at the county and at the city level. And so, I truly want to thank each and every one of you for volunteering your time and passion to taking care of the county. And because there's, sometimes not a long list of people that are competing for this job that you have. And I know how important it is to do things. So we're excited to give you our Camp Ripley update. I'm glad I gave you a handout because obviously what you're seeing on your screen is a little different because them lines above it say the 2023. And so we do this as a effort every spring to get out and get into our community and brief our Camp Ripley update. It's really, for most of you that have seen it, it's my 6th year of providing this to you. Some slides are very familiar to you, so you'll just have to bear witness and be patient as I roll through them. But we do this as an effort to enlist your help in helping educate the people that you represent and your neighbors on the importance of Camp Ripley so that we can hopefully continue to have one of the premier training bases that support the National Guard and the Department of Defense in our nation. And so if we go to the next slide, please. Like every organization, we've really looked at our core values and we created the mission statement. My mission statement hasn't changed since I took over as command. It's to provide the best facilities for the Department of Defense to come and train, as well as our state partners, both your National Guard and state agencies. And to do all that in the spirit of being the best community partner we can as well. And so that's really why I'm here today, is to work on that third leg of my three-legged stool of my mission statement, and that's to be as transparent and to build as positive a community relations as we can. Next slide, please. So the next three slides are kind of picture slides of who's who in the zoo and the National Guard. I think we have change every year that I come. So this year, I'm introducing you to Command Master Chief Lisa Erickson, who's pictured there in the bottom. Jeff Dolinsky may know what a Command Master Chief is, but she is an Air National Guard airman. She comes from Duluth. She was the Command Master Chief with the 148th Air Wing there, and my Adjutant General, Sean Mankey, my boss, who's up there, picked her to be the senior enlisted leader for the Minnesota National Guard, which is an honor for her as a female, but also as an Air National Guard E9 or Command Sergeant Major, because we are still a fairly Army-dominated organization. So for her to come and represent all the enlisted soldiers and airmen in Minnesota are pretty important. Next slide, please. So at our division headquarters, we also had change. Charles Kemper is in his second year as the division commander, and he is now supported by Command Sergeant Major Matthew Erickson, who's the gentleman there below. Matthew worked for me on the installation for 3 years as my Command Sergeant Major of the installation, so he's very familiar with Camp Ripley and will be a great asset in helping keep the division straight as they come to train at Camp Ripley. Next slide, please. And finally, in the audience here behind me, let me introduce Ryan Hosted. Command Sergeant Major Ryan Hosted is my new Command Sergeant Major. He replaced Command Sergeant Major Marcus Erickson this spring. And above him on the picture there is the installation's garrison commander, Bryce Erickson. He's new to the installation as well. And so we have a little bit of turnover, I guess. Ryan works full-time for me as well as the Garrison Command Sergeant Major. And Bryce is a traditional guardsman that comes 2 days a month and manages our training support unit and the garrison activities that they cover. And so that's the team. And I'm ending my 6th year as the senior commander at Camp Ripley. And I will tell you that there'll probably be somebody different that briefs you next spring. So, all right, next slide. So bottom line up front, we'd like to highlight what we feel is a pretty important piece that we bring to Morrison County, which is economic impact. About $75 million this last year. The largest portion of that is wages, so about $55 million in wages. You can see that we have about $9 million worth of construction projects this last year that we're working on, as well as we pumped another $1.7 million into ACUB easement acquisitions this last year, and which it was surprising. We never know how much money we'll get because that's kind of end of year funding that we've received from the government for that. We were told here a month ago that we'll see another 1.7 this year, and so we'll continue to work on that effort that we'll talk about here in a later slide called the Army Compatible Use Buffer Program. Next slide, please. So you know where Morrison County is at, and you know where Camp Ripley's at, but a lot of the audience is, I need to remind that we couldn't be any more centrally located in Minnesota. I like to tease that we're 2 hours from everywhere, but it really, for the National Guard, gives us a great advantage. 53,000 acres, 2,000 acres of a little built-up city in the center of the installation. We cover 3 biodiversity zones. That's what the colors are on that picture of Minnesota. So mixed forest, conifers, and the prairie. You can find all that terrain here on Camp Ripley, and then working through what we call ourselves in the National Guard work is a level 2 National Guard installation, which means that we have all the capabilities of a level 1, except we don't mobilize soldiers out of Camp Ripley. So next slide, please. So some of our accomplishments, we had over 500,000 DOD man days this last year again at Camp Ripley. With that, that's, the year before, we were about 550,000, so a little bit less, but still, our average is around 400,000. So the last couple of years have been phenomenal years for us with troop flow. We also increased what was an average of about 64,000 of civilian man days. This last year, we're at 74,000. So some of them units that came, we had a unit from Kentucky that's in the Air National Guard that came, their contingency response group. We saw some, the Navy divers and the Coast Guard divers are back to do their winter under the ice diving again in January. So that's pretty exciting. Our 194 armor came back last spring, and all their equipment flowed back through Camp Ripley. They were deployed to Kuwait and had the opportunity to support the withdrawal of our forces out of Afghanistan. We hosted 2 state patrol academies last year, and we're doing that again. And here in February, we supported the 50th anniversary of the Norwegian Exchange. And part of that process, you probably saw a lot of press about it, but we signed a new agreement with the country of Norway, designating them as a state partner. And what that's going to do for us is build a lot of opportunity for us to potentially send more Minnesota National Guard soldiers over to Norway to do training and schools. And we see that as part of our, not only increasing our readiness, but also giving those soldiers an opportunity to do something that, you know, they wouldn't normally get to do, and we hope that helps encourage them to stay in our organization. Next slide. So this slide, we once again highlight how your National Guard comes into your community and supports. I think the last time we supported Morrison County was with some generators during flooding a couple of years ago, but truly that comes from a request from your local sheriff to the state emergency management team. They build an executive order for the governor to sign, and that executive order then comes to the National Guard, where we are able then to deploy and provide forces and equipment to support your county. Next slide, please. She's trying real patiently to get my data to come up on the slide. But you'll just have to live with the pictures. So our construction update for 2022, there we go. We were pretty excited to highlight last spring the opening of our new fire hall. Mike Lemire got a chance to maybe show off where he works on a daily basis there. And I'm pretty excited to actually provide them some really good working space to include overnight quarters, because those firefighters work for me on a 24-hour basis. And very excited at the fact that, you know, every day I hear a siren leaving Camp Ripley going someplace in Morrison County, normally with our Mayo ambulance, but also with our fire trucks, supporting some local county response as well. We were really excited. We overhauled Nelson Hall, my historic headquarters, and had the opportunity of moving in there in October. I truly invite you to come and have a cup of coffee with me in that 100-year-old building, and we can show you all that we did to make that, you know, ready for another 100 years of occupation. The picture, it shows 6 new motor vehicle storage buildings that went up and were finished last year as well. That provides us more storage to put our armored fleet under cover. So these buildings hold 125 Bradley fighting vehicles. As any farmer in Morrison County knows, it's pretty important to keep the snow off your equipment, and it is for our Army as well. And so we're constantly adding more vehicle storage on the installation. And then finally, we're making full use of the stormwater infiltration basins that we dug over the last couple of years. What I referred to as the big dig. We hauled a lot of dirt out of Camp Ripley and put it over by the ethanol plant. But that created stormwater basin retention ponds for us that, you know, can handle up to 2 inches of rain off all my hard surfaces in my cantonment area, and allows that water to leach back into the water table rather than go into the Mississippi River. And they're filling up right now with the spring thaw finally. Next slide, please. So some of the work we're going to do this next year that you'll see some construction contracts for and some work on the installation. First off, we're gonna build 2 rail spurs on the east side of the cantonment area. It's gonna give me the opportunity to add 60 more, or 2 rail lines that'll allow me to park 60 rail cars. So now I can load 2 trains at once, which is important as we continue to build out our rail capacity on the installation so that we can mobilize our armor brigade. And so now I have the capability of loading 2 trains at one time. And that plus the siding that we added outside the installation gives us the capability to take what was about a 10-day problem set of how to get our armor brigade out of town down to almost 3 if we ran full 24/7. And so this really is an important addition into the readiness for the National Guard's response to our federal mission. We're adding a new headquarters building in Area 5. The building's complete. We gotta get the snow done so that we can do all the dirt work around the building yet, and then they'll hand it off to us. But a new modern headquarters building just south of our education center, and supporting our building Area 5. We've got the plans in place for a new access control point for the installation. The design is done. We had to push to get the design done because we're gonna ask for some congressionally directed funding from our national legislation team. And I'm hoping that we can put a new modern access control point on the installation. What that'll allow us to do will be to shut the iron gates of our main gate and maintain our main gate in its historical condition, but it'll allow us to have a new access control point that meets all our physical security requirements of standoff distance and final protected barriers and all sorts of things associated with that. We're gonna upgrade our tactical runway. We have one of the few dirt strips in the Air Force's inventory. So a lot of the C-130s that you see flying around in the air are coming to Camp Ripley specifically to land on our tactical airstrip. It needs resurfacing, so we're gonna put some money into covering it with new gravel. We're working on a plan to overhaul our water distribution inside of the installation. That'll involve working on some wells, as well as we are working on a new continuation of our fiber infrastructure downrange. And what this final project's gonna allow us to do is have a loop all the way around the perimeter of Camp Ripley, which will give us fiber access to a lot of our ranges and things like that downrange. Next slide. I'm pretty excited to continue to watch the saga of what the museums looks like. As you're aware, the legislature appropriated $13 million in 2020 to build a new museum. Those costs skyrocketed like a lot of construction, and so we're back at the legislature right now, from the museum's perspective, asking for some more money. There's money in the veterans bill for the museum, so we're hoping that that passes as part of the budget bills that are going through the legislature right now. If that occurs, we will then turn on the full design of the museum, which is what you see in the picture there below. About a 40,000 square foot building with lots of landscaping and displays outside as well, to include the conning tower from a nuclear submarine that's sitting in my base right now, that's in parts, that's gonna need a little sandblasting and painting to turn into a display. But we're pretty excited that they hope to see a groundbreaking this summer yet, once the financing is finished out, with a completion sometime in 2025. I think probably realistically the fall of 2025. And as you're aware, it's just it'll be located just east of the Veterans Cemetery. So it's gonna give it some great visibility and I think will be a great addition to the infrastructure of Morrison County. Next slide, please. So just some slides walking through our troop flow, so you're aware of when we're gonna make noise and when that is. As you can see, May's come right around the door for us here. Our May is gonna be a pretty heavy month for us, with over 100,000 man days in May alone. And some of that will be the start of our annual officer training academy for our officers, as well as we've got field artillery and armor units coming to do some qualification. So we'll be making some noise in May, hosting units from North Dakota and Illinois specifically. Next slide, please. We work into June. June, we're back down below 100,000 man days, but still around 90,000. We'll continue our officer school, as well as we've got some units coming to do some bridging over the Mississippi again, which will be good because the water flow will support that at that point. And so units from Iowa and North Dakota will be rolling through at that point. Next slide, please. July, we'll be back to producing some noise again for you. July is another month where we're running about 90,000 man days. We've got some units coming up from Iowa and Wisconsin, as well as we're hosting our 2-week youth camp again in the end of July, the first week in August. So I'm pretty excited. That camp annually has about, I'd say about 300 kids that run through it over a 2-week period. They're all military-connected children in some manner, and really gives us an opportunity to give them a good taste of what the National Guard does, as well as what Camp Ripley is. Next slide, please. And then finally, August, we'll go back into the noise-making game with some engineers on base doing some demo, about 90,000 man days again in August. So you can see we're averaging 90 to 100,000 man days throughout all the months of the summer. And we'll be fairly busy all the way up into September. The State Patrol Academy will start their second academy in August, and with the graduation then in the fall. Next slide. Speaking of the State Patrol, obviously, you know, we've got all sorts of state partners that work on the installation. The DNR and the State Patrol are both running academies on base. The DOT snowplow drivers will be back this fall. I want to highlight the top bullet there. We have an Air Force unit that's coming to Camp Ripley in May that are going to do some personnel paratroop drops right into our what we call our Ripley drop zone, which is our Cantonment area airfield. And so what I've told the team is we probably need to do a good job of advertising that so that the public might have an opportunity, if they're interested, to come and see some kids falling out of the sky, hopefully with a parachute. So, and then finally in the fall, we get back into our hunt season. Obviously, here in next week, we're going to start some of our hunting with our DNR turkey hunts next week. But in the fall, we really concentrate on decreasing our deer population on the installation as well. Next slide. So just as a reminder, I've got some permanently stationed Minnesota Department of DNR, State Patrol, HSCM, and MnDOT personnel that work every day on our installation. We're pretty, we are proud to host them, and they're just part of the fabric that's Camp Ripley. There's a lot of days where there's more state patrolmen on Camp Ripley than there are anyplace else in Minnesota, and as they come up to do their training. Next slide. And then as part of your public outreach to your community, please use this slide and the phone numbers associated to help your veterans and your military-connected families with some resources if needed. We've got all these resources on base. We're just listening to your proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We're in the middle of that as well now at Camp Ripley. We've got personnel that are dedicated to decreasing sexual assault in the military as well. You can come join us at the end of the month for the Sexual Assault Awareness 5K. But, they're doing the exact same job that your personnel are doing, which is making sure that people are aware of that. And so the family life counseling is kind of the same thing. There are counselors available for our soldiers to help them deal with some of the stress in their life. The Soldier Family Readiness Center is really a resource provider to our military folks. They're the avenue on how to get grants and things like that for people that need a leg up to get their car fixed or their furnace overhauled or something like that. And then the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon Coordinator is kind of a regional resource for us. We're pretty excited that your own county administrator has taken the reins and helped get the Morrison County Yellow Ribbon Committee back up and running. And obviously, as we work through how we continue to communicate needs, that's really the hardest part, is getting our soldiers to recognize that they have a need and that it's okay that they ask for help is often the hardest part of the whole process. So next slide, please. So just some information for you to take away, some of our community outreach. This September on the 17th, we're hosting our open house. And obviously, we'll open up Camp Ripley to have you come. You'll see a slide later here, so I won't ruin it. But we plan to have a great Sunday there where we're showing off Camp Ripley. We're in the middle of school season right now, so we annually see 4,000 to 5,000 fifth graders come through Camp Ripley to learn about our museum and some of the activities that our environmental team does. So we're looking forward to some spring tours there. We're working with the tribes to have our annual planning with for the future event here this spring, as well as some of the activities that we do throughout the year. We're still pretty proud. We hauled 500 pounds of food to the Motley Food Shelf this year, and so the generosity of my employees, both with gift tags as well as food donations around Christmas, are always important. And then once again, to highlight some opportunities for our veterans to do some hunting and fishing on Camp Ripley is pretty important. So, next slide. And then finally, my environmental team was once again nominated for a national level award, and they continue to do amazing things inside of our natural resources, taking care of all those different elements there you see in the middle of the slide. I've got 2 DNR biologists that work full-time on the installation attached to my headquarters, Brian Dirks and his wife Nancy. They told me the other day that they're retiring. And so that will have probably combined 40 years of Camp Ripley experience walk out the door as they retire. Now, we'll get the opportunity to replace them with some, new DNR biologists, but it won't quite be the same for a while. But we're pretty proud of their contribution. The next slide, please. And because of that, we always highlight the fact that we don't do that alone with just the personnel on Camp Ripley. All these different partnerships environmentally is what makes us so successful, be it the Bowser and the Nature Conservatory for our ACUP program, or the interns that we see from Central Lakes College and St. Cloud State every year. They really are the heart of how we get things done environmentally on installation. Next slide, please. So the Camp Ripley Prevented Fire Prescribed Burn Team, which is my environmental section and my DPW, annually burn about 15,000 acres. If we get a week of weather like today, we might actually get back on schedule. But we acknowledge that we have a lot of ground to burn in a short amount of time here in May. And so as you look at the map, all the stuff in kind of yellow are areas that we burn off just to make sure that we don't have fires that leave our installation, so predominantly our ranges. And then the darker colored are areas where we're trying to, manage the weed growth and the brush with fire, and so they're some of the lower priority areas. But once again, we'll be burning about 15,000 acres this spring, Lord willing. So next slide, please. And then finally, we've added some more green over the last year to the ACUB map. As you can see, that 3-mile buffer around Camp Ripley. We are actively continue to try to solicit and help landowners with providing us a lifetime easement on some of the, or not, a perpetual easement on land associated around Camp Ripley, all in an effort to keep forests and fields, and to prevent encroachment by development. And once again, we're not that far away from our the goal we set years ago on how many acres we thought we needed to enroll to be able to meet that goal. And so we're excited that once again this year we'll be able to add a little more income into the local community with some easement money to some of the farmers. Next slide. And then finally, the theme this year for the Camp Ripley Open House is the Sounds of Freedom. So I think the goal is an F-16 flyover, and obviously the annual chance to run around the inside of a C-130 and to see climb on all the pieces of equipment that the Army has. We'll also have, I think, some howitzers doing some maybe blank firing demonstrations and stuff like that. So, lots of activities in an effort to, issue some earplugs and maybe make some noise that day. Next slide, please. And then finally, my safety guy reminds you, if you see any of this in your backyard, or more importantly on Camp Ripley, don't pick it up. These are our annual safety message that we want the public to understand is we do deal with some dangerous munitions on the installation, and if they do, for whatever reason, come off the installation, please help us, help your local sheriff in that by disposing of them. We've got EOD teams that will come and help if we do find something like that in our community. So, next slide, please. And finally, if you haven't been to Nelson Hall, that's what it looks like on the north side. That's the team that helps me every day run the installation. And we took that last fall as our Christmas shot, and we're excited to answer any questions that you have. Please.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Gentlemen. Greg. Commissioner Blaine, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Cruz, a fantastic report, a fantastic handout for us. We're extremely grateful that you would take the time with your troops to come and visit with us. A couple points I need to make. We talk a lot, and I know you understand this because you too are a farmer like myself. And when this group gets together, we talk about governance in Morrison County. We talk about economic impact. We always say that Morrison County is an agricultural county, and our economies around here are driven by agricultural activity going on out there. But then there's always an asterisk to that conversation, and that's because of your installation being located within Morrison County. And so I go back in time 22 years ago when I entered the legislature, and at that time was made aware of the economic impact of Camp Ripley to Morrison County and the surrounding area. At that time was about $32 million, if my memory serves me correct. And I look here today, we've now grown that economic impact in Morrison County in central Minnesota to $75 million of dollars flowing through this county for the benefit of the people of Morrison County. And I think the dynamics haven't changed from 20-some years ago when I was in St. Paul, and I experienced and witnessed a lot of envy by my colleagues. I'm sure Commissioner Lemire, when you were there, the same. How many of our colleagues would have loved to have a Camp Ripley in their district or in their county because of what it does, not just economically, but in the spirit of building community. We recognize Commissioner Lemire's work and his employment out there, but when I go back home, I have close personal friends, neighbors, and relatives who all report to Camp Ripley to work every day, 5 days a week, as either state employees or federal employees. And if Camp Ripley wasn't there, we're not sure what these people would be doing and how they would be surviving. So I can't state well enough the importance of our relationship with you and your leadership at Camp Ripley and the tasks that we have to tackle as governance for Morrison County. But we look forward to continuing this relationship. I'm saddened to hear that we won't have you in our presence if you are correct a year from now, because it's been for me, it's been a tremendous pleasure in working with you and all of your people at Ripley, so thank you.
Commissioner Lemire.
I just, the economic impact, Greg hit that. I just want to thank you as a soldier for fighting for our freedoms, whether it's across the creek to a different country or protecting our state, and your willingness to support Morrison County. We as commissioners are going to miss you, and you have some pretty big shoes to fill.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wincher.
Again, General Cruz, it's been an honor knowing you for the last 6 years, and as you stated, there'll probably be somebody else doing the presentation in the following year, but no pun intended, but that person will have some big shoes.
Commissioner Casper.
Yes, Mr. Chair. General Cruz, I'd like to say thank you as well. You will be greatly missed, even your tours to the schools. It's because of men and women like you that make America proud. Thank you for being there. Thank you for being our protection. We admire you guys greatly. You're heroes in our eyes. Thank you.
Sir, I have to go back a number of years because it was a number of years ago that our paths crossed in public safety. And I can't remember what your rank was, but I know that you definitely were not the general at that time. And it doesn't make any difference. But you were leading public safety on Camp Ripley when our paths crossed. I was an emergency manager back in those days. And the growth that I've seen because of you at Camp Ripley is absolutely second to none. And I know you don't like to hear that kind of stuff, but I'm telling it to you. Years of service, the commitment that you brought when you took the reins over there is second to none. We have today something called a mutual aid agreement that allows Camp Ripley to bring their fire apparatuses, if you will, their fire trucks, their big red machines, anywhere in Morrison County without a question, at any time. And that's due to you, sir. And I'm very proud. I was part of that at the very start, many years ago. I'm very proud of what that did to Morrison County. It brought a resource that is absolutely, truly, as you know, second to none to any other community around here. For me to go onto post and to take a look at the new building, I call it the new building, the new fire hall, your ambulance service, if you will, connection with Mayo, thank you, to be able to have that resource. Nobody even knows that. And I don't mean nobody, but it's kind of one of the best kept secrets in the country that we have an ambulance service that goes off post, off base, at any given time, whenever they get the urge to go, whenever they get called to go, I should say. Not a whole lot of people can say that kind of stuff. I want to say thank you for being my friend, for doing what you've done for all these years, and for your service, sir. Thank you. Gentlemen, anything further?
Well,
That's all we have.
If I may, just thank you for the kind words. And, my wife and I moved here with our kids in 2006 to Morrison County. And it's a special place, so thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you, sir. With that being said, gentlemen, let's take a 5. All right, thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order. And our next item of business this morning is going to be Miss Amy and Land Services. Good morning.
Morning.
All right, I have a few things for you this morning off the heels of our last Planning Commission meeting. The first one is to consider the conditional use permit amendment request from Camp Shamana. If you recall, this was to essentially add an item to their master plan, and that was to construct an additional 600 square foot cabin. This was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with the two conditions that had already been attached to the CUP, that the camp shall not allow patrons and staff to utilize soaps and other cleansers within Lake Shamana, and the camp shall not allow horses and other livestock to enter the waters of Lake Shamana.
I'll make a motion with the two conditions.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Gentlemen, further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next one is to consider the interim use permit request from Rice Creek Family Farms. Again, this is an amendment to their existing interim use permit for an event venue. This specific request was to construct a 70 by 70 permanent structure on an existing concrete pad, and with 7 conditions, and those are the same conditions that followed the previous interim use permit, Mr. Chair. So these were recommended for approval.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The next one is to consider the interim use permit request from Nancy and Randy Wincher, and this was to establish an outdoor recreation venue specifically for a haunted kind of Halloween walk. This was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with 5 conditions. The first, a porta potty serviced by a licensed provider shall be on site and made available for customer use. 2, no parking shall occur upon the road right-of-way. 3, the property owner shall abide by all applicable regulations and laws related to the event. 4, ticket sales shall end at 11 o'clock p.m. each evening the event is open. And 5, the interim use permit shall sunset when the following individuals no longer own the property, and there's a list of family members there.
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
I just want to say that this was debated at length at the Planning Commission meeting, and we were all in attendance. Well, most of us were in attendance at that meeting.
I have a question, discussion item for the board, actually 2 of them. We recently had a item come before this board, and a porta potty was the discussion. And it was agreed upon by this board that, you know, we're really not telling anybody how to run a business. And that same scenario, I think, is back with us again today, that we're putting an item onto this that says, well, you have to have a porta potty. I'm really not going to tell Mr. Wincher how to run his business. There's also an item that, as we all were at the Planning Commission meeting, and very clearly, no parking shall occur upon the road right-of-way. I'm very clear what that language says. In all respect, I don't know that Mr. Wincher has control over me parking my vehicle on the road right-of-way. I know that in the discussion that we had, there was conversation, and I cannot remember how big the area is, but a very large area, and I would ask Commissioner Wincher if he could tell me how big the area is that he has set aside for parking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's approximately 3 acres.
So my question to the board is it really proper to have no parking on the roadway as part of his condition when he has no control over me parking my vehicle on the roadway? And is it our business practice to tell him if we should have a porta potty or not? Just a question for the board.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I think that's how it's supposed to be, no parking on road right-of-ways. Is that correct or not?
Mr. Chair, this is under outdoor recreation, and there are no performance standards within the ordinance for outdoor recreation. In some similar, like limited rural business, it is a requirement, it is a performance standard that no parking on the road right-of-way occur.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. And if you want to make that motion about the porta potty, I'm fine with that too. I can amend my motion if that's the wish of the board.
Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we had a previous CUP or IUP where I spoke to that issue where I didn't feel that it was the board's right or responsibility to tell applicants how to run their business. We're here whether or not, to tell them whether or not we would permit it. I kind of feel the same applies in this situation. As far as the issue with parking, Mr. and Mrs. Wincher have you can park a boatload of cars, baby, on 3 acres of land. I mean, you can have like 7 weddings and still have parking spaces there. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Whether or not it's listed there in the conditions, is probably a moot point. But I would ask the board members who move this for consideration that maybe we'd strike number 1 on there. Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Casper, did you have something?
Amy wanted to say something.
Yep, and she will. Did you have something, Commissioner
Yeah,
Casper?
Mr. Chair, I would just say I would like to amend that permit to strike number 1 and number 2 is unnecessary.
Is that in the form of a motion? I'm sorry. I don't think it can be. You
My
seconded
only
it, right?
concern on amending on the number 2 is you're not paying for parking, right? You're not charging for parking. So why would people park on the road right away? My only concern is there's some instances where we want to make that a requirement, and I don't want to make precedent that we will not add that no parking on the road right away anymore. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
Miss Amy.
Mr. Chair, I believe the purpose that condition was put on was to satisfy the first criteria, and that is the use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. So if you feel that this condition is not needed because you have determined that this will not put an excessive burden on roadways, and part of that is passability for the traveling public, then you may want to drop it. If you feel it is needed to meet that criteria, then my advice would be to keep it.
I totally agree with what you just said. I get it, but my point of the whole thing is that you have no control over me parking on the side of the road. He has none. He has absolutely none. If I pull up and park on the side of the road, he has no control over me parking there or not. That's my only concern with the statement, no parking shall occur upon the road right of way. I get it. I totally understand. So and I'm just bringing it up as a question, and we'll go from there. That's fine. And if we need to have or want to have the motion amended, that's fine. I just needed to bring it up because it just he doesn't have control or the ability to prevent me from parking on the roadway.
I will amend my motion to eliminate 1, but I think we should leave 2 on just to abide by the criteria questions.
Fully understand. So we have an amendment. Do we have a second to the amendment?
I think it would be advisable to strike number 2 as well.
Well, then you can't second my motion. Someone else will have to.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I'll second Commissioner Lemire's amended motion.
So we're making a motion, we've got a second, we've had some discussion, and what we're doing is we're getting rid of the porta potty. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion?
And Mr. Chair, I'll be abstaining from everything here, so.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good discussion.
Okay, and the last item I have is to consider the interim use permit request from Brad and Crystal Hartung, and this is to establish an automotive repair shop. This was also recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with 5 conditions, and those 5 conditions are abide by all applicable state and local laws regarding automotive repair and proper disposal of fluids and wastes. 2, maintain records of disposal of automotive fluids and wastes and provide for review of records at the request of the Land Services Department. 3, no outdoor storage of vehicles or vehicle components, except for the vehicles on site for service, shall be located on the property. 4, a holding tank must be installed to collect the shop drain water by June 30th, 2023. The water from the holding tank must be properly disposed of according to MPCA requirements. And 5, the interim use permit shall sunset when the following individuals no longer own the property, and it lists several property or family members.
I'll make a motion for more discussion.
Second.
Got a motion, a second, further discussion?
And again, we were at attendance to this one. The Planning Commission did a great job of vetting this, and again, the applicant with the surrounding areas gave them a good send-off too, as far as the neighbors and that sort. So again, I'll be voting yes.
Further discussion? Hearing none, gentlemen, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chair, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
And moving right along, number 8 on our agenda is a Public Works report. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Board.
Good morning, Tony.
I have a singular item this morning. Back in March, we had a bid letting for our HSIP project, SP 049070034, contract number 306. This is a Chevron project located across the county. In 2023, or the fall of '22, there was a special solicitation for some additional HSIP funds. These are funds that are used for highway safety improvement projects. The Chevron project we applied for, we're going to be updating some of our curve signs. Those are referred to as chevrons. It's the yellow sign with the black arrow on it. On the 16th, we had a bid letting. We had a good turnout of bidders. Actually had 4 different bidders with numbers all the way across the board. So we had an engineer's estimate at just over $109 or just shy of $110,000 at $109,845. And we had bids ranging from Jack Construction, or Jaak LLC, coming in at $77,667, all the way up to $133,751. So bids all the way across the board. Went through the federal process. They reviewed this contractor. They're meeting all the federal EEO requirements, and we've received authorization from the federal office. I'd like to make a recommendation to the board to authorize a resolution to award this project to Jaak LLC in the amount of $77,667.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just for clarification, Tony, I think you said contract number 306, and it says 309.
Yes, you're
Before I
correct.
make my motion?
309, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
Got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Commissioner Wincher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is something that's just not putting on our lap. We had a discussion about this at the Public Works meeting, so we knew this was coming to the board, so thank you.
And, Mr. Chair, did we get grant funding for this?
So this is 100% federally funded, so there will be no local dollars contributed to this project.
Thank you for that.
Anything further from the board? Gentlemen, this is a roll call vote. Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
Blaine.
Aye.
Lemire.
Aye.
Casper.
Aye.
And myself, Commissioner Jelinski, is an aye vote. That motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
Well, it's good, Tony. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
kindly.
Thank you, Tony.
Our next item of business is item number 9, the administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One item here in the record, and then one piece of information to pass on the board. So the first item is addresses the auditor treasurer appointment and elected, and the discussion that the board has had on this matter since last September. And again, to catch us all up, the board, auditor treasurer resigned in August, last day was September, went through the election, did not take office in January. The board held a public hearing and then passed a resolution to appoint the auditor treasurer February 21st here. Then a 30-day period was granted to allow residents to petition against this board action. And the requirement for that action would be to receive 10% of the registered voters signing a petition to be in favor of keeping the position elected or to oppose the board's decision to move to an appointment. With that said, last Wednesday, a letter was provided from our interim auditor treasurer. This letter has been submitted to our local media, addressing that the petition was accepted. The original petition is 272 pages long with just over 2,400 signatures. After the auditing of the petition, it was determined that there were 2,196 valid signatures, surpassing the 2,182 required signatures to reach the 10% of the registered voters. So for today's action, Mr. Chair, to set what I think is deemed appropriately, to set the record straight, our last action that was recorded in the county minutes was that the auditor treasurer position would be appointed. Based on this petition and the statutory requirements associated with it, I bring forth to the board a resolution that rescinds that action from February to acknowledge the process as outlined by statute.
And Mr. or Administrator, Matt, I would ask if you would to read that.
I will. Rescind resolution number 2023-024, appointment of the office of auditor treasurer. Whereas on February 21st, 2023, the Morrison County Board of Commissioners approved resolution 2023-024 for appointment of the office of auditor treasurer. And whereas Minnesota Statute 375 Alpha .1205 Subdivision 6 Bravo states within 30 days after the county board adopts the resolution, a petition requesting referendum may be filed with the county auditor, and the petition must be signed by at least 10% of the registered voters of the county. And whereas Morrison County voter registration at the start of the verification process was 21,818, 10% of the voter registration would be 2,182. And whereas Morrison County received a petition on March 22nd, 2023, containing 2,196 valid signatures, and after verification from the Auditor Treasurer's Office, found the petition requesting a referendum to be sufficient. And now therefore be it resolved that the Minnesota County Board of Commissioners hereby rescinds Resolution 2023-024 according to Minnesota Statute 375A.1205 Subdivision 6B, that if the petition is sufficient, the county board resolution is rescinded. Adopted this day.
Gentlemen, I'd look for a motion.
So move.
Second.
No. No.
Second, Mr.
Got a motion, got a second, further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And so then, gentlemen, what this resolution, as it states, is that it can allow for a referendum. Now that 10%, you've received that feedback from 10%, there is an option, according to this statute, now that this is added to the 2024 ballot to receive voter input as in the form of a resolution. That the action is not taking place today, but it is an option moving forward that I'm sure we'll be discussing. In addition to that, for the office itself, our next steps here is to readdress the interim appointment. If you recall, when I asked our interim auditor treasurer to serve in that capacity in August, I had asked her to hold that position until February. We've gotten a couple extra months past that, so I will readdress with our interim and then come back to the board with some options moving forward to fill the absence of that position.
Very good. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, if I may, again, this is not the time that we have a discussion, but it was brought up to me by several voters of Morrison County that on the petition, it states that this is public knowledge. And again, I'm not here for discussion right now. The question I would have, is this something that we're going to have to publicly put the petition on our website, in the paper? And again, this is not the time for that, but I think it's something that we have to address in the short term.
Anything further, gentlemen? Okay, sounds like a winner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And then my last item, as I said, was more so of an announcement. Again, in the last month, we've had the resignation of our Health and Human Services Director. And last Friday, I made an offer, and the offer was accepted. So I'd like to announce to the board that Mr. Nathan Bertram has accepted the position of Health and Human Services Director within Morrison County with a start date of the 8th of May. And when Nathan comes in and we get him settled onto the Morrison County team, I'll be sure to bring him in front of the board to introduce him to the board.
Outstanding. Anything further, Matt?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anything further from the board? Gentlemen, it's time for committee scheduling. And I'm not exactly sure, but I believe it's April 16th through the 23rd, through the 29th. 16th through the 29th. It's all the same to everybody. I'll get it kicked off. Scheduled at 5:30 on the 17th is a Good Neighbors EMS meeting, and that's at St. Gabe's. However, that meeting is probably going to get changed to a different date. And I do not know what the date is going to be, if it gets changed. On the 18th at 8:30 in the morning, scheduled is a planning meeting here at the Government Center. At 6 o'clock that evening is a Planning Commission Board of Adjustment meeting. That is not going to be a public hearing. It's not going to be a public hearing. I believe Amy's got scheduled a learning session, and the board is certainly, if you wish, can engage to attend, but I believe she's got a session planned for the board, that PCBOA board. In fact, I'll just ask her, she's right there. On the 18th, you have there's no public hearing.
Correct.
But you've got some schooling.
Shoreland specialist is going to be discussing what he does.
And if the county board wishes to attend, they certainly can.
Very well.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Miss Amy. Perfect timing. On the 19th, at 3:30 in the afternoon, I've got a State Emergency Communications Board Executive Committee meeting. That's virtual. That I'm probably not going to make, because at 4 o'clock that afternoon, Commissioner Wincher and I are going to head to Madden's for a Students of Character celebration. However, at 7 o'clock that same evening is the Morrison County Spring Township meeting, and that's held here in this facility in the boardroom. On the 20th at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Owners and Operators meeting. That's virtual. At 2 o'clock that same afternoon, I've got a Public Safety Communications Conference meeting statewide, which is also virtual. The 25th at 9 o'clock in the morning, we've got a county board meeting. 7 o'clock that same evening, as many of you know, for years and years and years, there's been a Thanksgiving event that has been held at the Little Falls Community High School. There's conversation of that being back. There's been a planning committee put together, and I'm going to be joining that planning committee at 7 o'clock at a residence here in Little Falls. It's just planning, just conversation. There's no announcements that are to be made over that. On the 26th at 11 o'clock in the morning, I have a Central Minnesota Emergency Services Board Executive Committee meeting. On the 27th at 12:30 in the afternoon, I have a State Emergency Communications Board meeting. I vice chair that meeting, and that will be held virtually. And one more, gentlemen, at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 28th, I have an EMS Joint Powers Board meeting. That meeting is in person, and it is at the Stearns County Service Center. As it is right now, that's all I have. Commissioner Wincher, I will look to you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 18th, we're scheduled to have a Great River Regional Library. That is canceled, so we will not have one in April. On the 20th, Thursday, I have an annual meeting at Tri-Counties TCC at Great River Arts, and that's at 5 o'clock. And the 24th, there's an extension meeting here at the, I believe it's gonna be here at the courthouse, and that's at 5:30. And on the 28th, I'll have Soil and Water at 8 o'clock at the Soil and Water Building, and that would do it for me.
Thank you. Commissioner Lemire.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
That's okay.
Totally different. month.
Take your time. If I got you confused a little bit there, I don't
No.
know. Okay.
On the 20th, we have a safety committee meeting, 2 o'clock. And you got that. 26th, HRA meeting, 9 o'clock at HRA.
Okay.
And then you got the rest.
Okay.
Thanks.
Commissioner Blaine.
On Thursday, April 20th at 7 PM, the Egg Society will meet, and I believe they will still be meeting here. I believe. If I find out different, I will, if they're not meeting here, they'll be at the fairgrounds.
Okay.
I think a lot of that's weather permitting. On Tuesday, April 25th at 2 PM in the afternoon, I have a Mississippi River One Watershed, One Plan Policy Committee meeting at the Crow Wing Land Services Building in Brainerd. And on Thursday, April 27th at 6 PM, Region 5 Development Commission will meet at Sourcewell. And that is all I have,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Casper.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I don't have a whole lot to add here. I guess on the 18th, I have a community development meeting at Pine County Bank at 12 o'clock. And then later that week, the 20th at noon, the airport meeting out at the airport. And then the last one is on the 28th at 10 o'clock, Mississippi Headwaters Board up in Walker.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Gentlemen,
Chair.
excuse me?
And just a general announcement on the Wednesday, April 26th, is the 17th Annual Denim Day, sponsored by Hands of Hope in recognition of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And we will ask and encourage county staff to wear denim and others in the community to bring heightened awareness to this cause.
Thank you, Matt. I forgot about that one. I'll look to the board. Anything further?
How about a big old adjournment?
How about a big old adjournment? I'll adjourn this meeting at 10:40.
Thank you,
Good job,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.